Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
And this is the podcast that helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. Brandon.
Sean.
Got a quick question for you.
I might have a quick answer.
We'll find out. Every week we do a weekly question that we ask each other and also ask you. And today's one I have is either currently or historically, what has been your favorite way to consume music?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
Passively. No, I'm just kidding. Although that happens a lot. I think my favorite way to consume music is just... Damn, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like how I listen to music every day, or like how I would. I think my favorite way is honestly just through the like an MP3 player kind of style, where it's like just
like a dedicated one.
It's through my phone, but
Okay.
like just like kind of like that kind of style. I call it a style because like not everybody does it that way.
You're talking about streaming, or are you talking
Streaming,
about... Okay.
yeah, mainly. I call it a style only because like that's what it was when we grew up. You know, that was the, I don't know about you, but that was the way that I consumed a lot of music.
the
was
dedicated.
the dedicated. You know, obviously it's moved over to the Apple Music app or whatever, the music app on the iPhone. But had earbuds and that way. That's probably like my favorite way to do it.
Well, that's why I asked historically
Yeah.
too, because like with, you mentioned the dedicated iPod or MP3 player,
yeah.
like the way you listened to it was you had to purchase the songs. You had a
Exactly.
dedicated amount of songs, whereas now with streaming, so
Because
like,
I still have my purchases on my phone, you know, so like that's exactly what you're alluding to. Is that
do you go there or do you go to streaming?
I tend to stick to more streaming, obviously, these days. Bigger library, more accessible. I pay for it, so you might as well use it, you know, kind of thing. But that's usually the way that I kind of go about it, is a lot of streaming these days. What about you?
So you're saying your favorite way to listen to music isn't from shitty ceiling speakers in a Walmart bathroom?
Well, you know, it depends on what's going when I'm at the urinal, you know? It might be a jam. You never know. They do have some bops going on.
Sometimes. Man. Yeah, no, I'm going to say my favorite, I mean, I am nostalgic for the old MP3 player.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was alluding to.
Yeah. I've seen some pop up on Facebook Marketplace recently, with Zunes and stuff. I'm like, man, I miss those days. I really do.
I just moved and unpacked everything, and I just found my old iPod Touch Gen 4.
Such a classic.
As well as my iPod Nano.
Yep.
So I've been like pulling those up and like, man, I did not have a lot of songs and I did not have good taste.
But it's so funny because it felt like we had a ton of songs at the same time. And it's like, we look back, we're like, wow, that doesn't even like, the amount of songs that I bought versus the amount I have in my playlist now, it's not even comparable.
Oh, my dad did a huge hack when we were in that era. He would
Don't incriminate yourself.
No, you can rip songs from a CD.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I used to do that all the time. Go to the library.
Exactly.
Yep.
Go to the library, fill out your thing. And once you import it from the library, you know, it imports the song title, the album art, the, you know, people who are credited on the list.
Makes it nice and tidy.
Makes it all tidy.
Great on the iPod or whatever.
Pull it up, you got the album art right there, the name right there, and it's super convenient. And a lot of times they'll even have the genre, so it organizes it within the list on iTunes.
Beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
And even though a lot of times it's streaming where most people listen to it, a lot of those tags that, you know, were in old music are still relevant. Because
Absolutely.
Spotify and all that, they categorize things, you know, and tie back to each other. So, yeah.
Are you saying that metadata is important?
What? Is that what I'm saying?
Whoa.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Whoa. It's honestly, it's one of the best ways to, organize your stuff. You know, like that's how everything was so coherent on the iPod back in the day when you were like actually buying it legitimately or ripping it.
Yeah.
Everything would be copied over, and that was so nice. That was so beautiful. Now, if you were going to places like LimeWire and stuff and getting all that stuff illegally, the metadata wouldn't copy as it should normally. So you'd have really weird song titles. And if anybody out there is listening right now, do you remember, I know we tried to introduce the topic, but I got to bring it back.
Go back. No.
Do you remember going into iTunes and then editing metadata yourself because it wasn't popping up correctly on your iPod? That was so crucial to do, because otherwise you're going to unknown artist and looking through a sea of just trash.
I remember when I first started doing this, when I had my little tiny desk with a USB microphone and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was just doing really basic recordings for local artists and whatnot. I didn't know how to adjust the metadata because I used FL Studio at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I would take the final render and put it into iTunes and change the metadata and then go into the file and take the file out. And that's what I would give them to put on CDs and send to like CD Baby and stuff like that. Cause I just didn't know how to incorporate that within the render.
Totally.
Or what other kind of software is to do. And you can still download and use iTunes for that purpose.
You can. Absolutely. Yep. Totally valid way to do it. Takes a really long time, but totally a valid way to do it. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Metadata is very important, Sean.
That it is.
It's
you want to talk
very
about
important.
what it is?
Yeah. So metadata is basically information that's associated with your music.
The most exciting thing in the world.
Yes. And like this might be a little bit drier of an episode, but it is important because this is how you get credited and how you get paid within the music industry. I mean, this could include things like song title, artist name, the track count on the CD, whatever number song it is. The album art itself, I believe you can embed onto metadata. And then I know in Pro Tools you can do like comments on there, you do genre, different things like that. Everything that's included or associated with your song, so that way it can be identified correctly.
And if you get really tricky with it, you can do things that like, I know ARGs will do stuff where they're like kind of impose images or certain layouts within like a spectral analyzer and things like that. And that's kind of technically a metadata.
Totally.
It affects the waveform, but in a certain visualizer, it's the data of it. So, maybe if you want to do some sort of ARG or some fun thing with your fans, you could look into incorporating that into your WAV file. But that's besides the point. We're just saying like it's all over the place.
It is.
There's things from as complex as that to as simple as a song title. When someone pulls up your song, you want them to know this is what it's called. And almost as important, if not more important, who made it?
It's very important to do. Very important. Yeah. So it's your virtual stamp on your song. And this, like I said, this makes collecting royalties very important. This is how you get money and make sure that everything is moving into the correct spots. Same thing with aligning ISRC codes for your songs. And we've talked about ISRC codes in the past.
Yes, we have.
But now here they are again because they are that important. This also includes like UPC codes for physical copies that you might buy. I actually just bought a CD. I'll go get it right now.
Jump cut, the power of editing.
I actually bought a CD most recently from my boy Jalen, who just put out this CD with an independent distributor. And there's no UPC code on this. But if there was, it'd be right here or right here. And that's how you
show
would
it
track.
Away from the camera. It would be right there.
Thank you.
Right there.
Thank you. I actually bought a CD most recently from my boy Jalen, who just put out this CD with an independent distributor. And there's no UPC code on this. But if there was, it'd be right here or right here. And that's how you
show
would track.
It away from the camera. It would be right there.
Thank you.
Right there.
Thank you. So yeah, but that's one of the more physical ways of a label is a UPC code, so it's a bunch of unsexy stuff. Really boring, but important.
Very, very important. Especially if you plan on distributing your music in ways other than the album drop or whatnot. We talked about different release methods in an earlier episode, and one of the main predominant styles, which Spotify actually recommends you do, is multiple singles or something called the waterfall method, where you are slowly releasing to build up to an EP or build up an album by one single at a time every 4 to 6 months, which is what Spotify recommends the frequency you should post your music in order to gain their algorithm and stay top of mind. And if you are doing that and you want to build it into an EP or an album instead of just a bunch of singles, then when you re-upload, you need to include an ISRC code. So that way, any distributions, any streaming platform or any platform in general that your song is being sold on or played back, it knows that, hey, this is the same song. So like if you have a single art and then you add another song and there's a new single art for those two as a re-upload, you can change the artwork, change things like that when you upload, but use the same ISRCs so your streams stay consistent, your plays stay consistent. It still stays in people's playlists. If you don't use it and remove the older version, it gets removed from playlists, and that can really affect how many plays your song is getting. So if you ever do that, like you upload a new version or an album version, you remove the single version, and all of a sudden you're not getting as many plays on it, that might be why, because anyone who put it in their playlist, they no longer have it. So utilizing that is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And your music moves around an awful lot. Like let's say something gets picked up for sync licensing, right? You need to be able to track that along the way and make sure that you're getting credited properly for these sync licensing placements as well. So it's very important to make sure that everything is embedded correctly into the file, or that you attach something along with your file, so that way you are credited properly. And this has to do with what are those called? PROs, as well. So that helps track. Same with like Nielsen Sound Scan or something like that. That helps you find where your song is and what it's being utilized for, if you are so lucky that it's being utilized for something. So very important to keep track of, making sure that you get it right up front. It's a lot of like kind of tedious work, but it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do. You just got to make sure that it's properly done. Seriously, it's like a quality control thing at this point.
And now a lot of times, most as the bare bones level of it, if you are looking to get your stuff and get it out, and you're not at the stage where you're worried about licensing or getting all these versions or whatever.
Yep.
Most distributors will automatically create and embed a lot of this metadata for you. That's why they ask all those questions if you ever go to like a DistroKid or a CD Baby or a TuneCore or whatever it is. They ask for the song title, the artist title, people who work on it, and album art, all that kind of stuff. That is what they're doing it for. They're looking to input the metadata on the file that you upload. Or if you upload like a lossless file, like a WAV or whatnot, then they have to like present it in a certain way, or they make a MP3 conversion of it that has that metadata imbued, because different file types are able to have metadata or not, or certain kinds of metadata and not other kinds of metadata. So there's positive benefits of all this kind of stuff. When I deliver, when you deliver too, it's not just a WAV file. I also deliver an MP3. You also deliver an MP3. And I have a lot of artists ask me, why do I do this? Well, the main reason, the biggest reason, is that it's got metadata. And if you are going to be submitting something that requires metadata, I want it to be I want them to use the highest quality MP3 that's possible. So like I'll put in what I can put in, and then they can edit it and they can alter it as they need to. And it still remains a high quality MP3 versus if you upload something and then you're relying on their conversion and their stuff based off of another file. And then also another reason is MP3 is just a smaller file. It's easier to download.
And you can transfer it easier, send it to people easier.
Exactly.
So it's also convenient, you know. And another thing I think big point here is like, why don't we just embed it onto the WAV file? Well, you really can't. I think there are ways you can. I think there are workarounds, but as far as I know, that's not very common to do on a WAV.
Correct. It's the answer is a mixture of yes and no. In my research, you can, but like it has to be received a certain way, and it's kind of like wrapped in there instead of like embedded in it.
Yeah, it's like clunky.
It's like an extra thing on top of it. Like I know if you, it gets a little more complicated with that.
It's a little bit more complicated, and so that's why we don't send embedded WAV files, because well, you can, but you can't at the same time. And I know with Pro Tools, like the software that we use and a lot of other DAWs, they don't even allow you to do something like that. It's more so focused on the MP3 version of it. Now, if we were exporting in FLAC or anything like that, we're able to do it on that sort of thing, but that is way less common of a file type, I feel. So it's just easier delivering a universal WAV file rather than going into maybe something more niche like the FLAC or the AIFF. And keeping all this in mind,
there's something I experienced recently with a client of mine who is doing a radio marketing campaign, and there were a couple radio stations out there that would only take file types of MP3s. They would not take WAV formats. Part of the reason is because they want access to all that file type. Part of it's because smaller file, and it gets into it.
Then it has to. There are some places that have to re-encode an MP3. So if you have a WAV file and you deliver it too hot, and it takes that re-encoding, it can clip or distort during the conversion process, depending on what they're using. So especially more like antiquated radio stations, like a college radio or something, it can absolutely distort the shit out of your file. So that's why they look for MP3s.
Here's a quick pause to remind you that if you're enjoying the insights of today's episode, please click subscribe or follow us so that you're always in the loop as to what's happening at the Music Makers Cookbook.
And if you're loving what we're cooking up, a rating or review helps us reach more independent artists just like you. Thank you for listening to Music Makers Cookbook.
Now back to the show. So that's why it's good to have MP3s. Not just for the metadata, but for that use case as well.
Exactly.
But it was really interesting because I was talking to him. He's like, why do they want MP3? Like it's not going to sound as good. So we had that conversation of all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because it's like Audible has different requirements. I've been going through a audiobook recently. This almost has nothing to do with it, but you do have to embed metadata onto it, or you can during their process. And they want MP3s delivered in like 192 kilobits per second, which is really like lossy, super lossy.
Yeah.
But obviously it makes sense because the audio files are super long. They'd be gigabytes long.
Oh yeah.
If you delivered a full audio wave file, of that resolution, but man, would it sound better?
It would, but also at the same time, it's spoken word.
Exactly. So you don't lose as much.
There.
Yeah. You don't lose as much, but sometimes when I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm like, this could be higher quality. I know it could be. So should we go over some of the actual types of metadata that are usually included or embedded into files? Yeah. Should we do that go more specifically?
Please do. Take the floor. Wait, no. Man the station in the kitchen.
That's right. That's right.
We make food puns.
I'm the sous chef. I'm chefing up in this corner. Yes, chef. So this includes like things like basic info like song title, artist name, album name, genre, release date. If you hear anything that you want to stop me on, please do. I'm just going to go through this entire list.
Go for it.
This includes also songwriters and producers, full names and roles of contributions, depending on how far you go with it.
Something I do want to say real quick, because a lot of this is like the very basic, the one that both you as an artist and also listeners are going to be interfacing with. As I mentioned, a lot of these music distributors will embed these things for you.
Yes.
We have a whole episode about choosing which distributor you should be using. A factor to that is different distributors have different kinds of metadata you can put into it. When it comes to credits specifically, certain platforms allow you to put in who was the producer, who was the engineer, who was individual musicians, and some are just like, what's the artist? That's it. So if some of these things that we're listing are important to you and you don't really have a way of embedding the file yourself with this kind of information, or you're banking on a distributor to do it for you, not all can do that. So check out that episode as well.
Great point. The next thing we have is ISRC codes, which is the International Standard Recording Code. We've talked about this before. It's your unique identifier for a specific track. It's like your serial number for the track. You have UPC code, which is not to be confused with an ISRC code. A UPC code is a universal product code, and it's identifier for albums or releases, usually in physical format. Then we have number 5, which is your PRO or performing rights organization, such as like ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, any of those that might be embedded within that, and who they are. Number 6 is your publisher information, so like applicable details on who distributed or who published the rights to your song, if you are under a label more specifically, or a publishing contract or something like that. Number 7 is lyrics and language, so you can embed lyrics for your metadata, and that's becoming increasingly more popular, especially amongst streaming apps, because they will show you the lyrics in there. Now that is a whole separate process sometimes, so you're going to have to look at your distributor and see how they handle that, because I know each platform's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah.
That one's a little murky.
Yeah, and then there are also services that allow you to add your lyrics after the fact. So if you miss out on embedding it in the metadata of the file, and there are things you can do to go back and add the song, add them retroactively on most of the and services.
Exactly. So you don't really have to worry about that forefront.
But like, it is really cool. I remember sometimes I would download a song off of iTunes or from the CD, and then the lyrics would just, I would be able to.
Cool.
And back at the time when it was like so hard, like rare for that to happen, it was just so cool to like just be able to scroll through and read them.
That was a real treat, and I used to go through and then put lyrics in all the rest of my songs.
Oh, really?
And then at some point I was like, I'm tired of this.
Yeah, I never went that crazy.
I was a little nerd back in the day, man, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun going to those lyrics websites with all the ads all over the place and make your computer run like shit. Nostalgia. And number 8 is explicit content indicator. You will have to check a box on your distributor, most likely, whether or not it contains explicit material or not.
Does it have a fuck in it?
Yep, pretty much. This one does.
I have to make this as an 18 plus podcast.
Right. Thanks, Sean.
Shit, why'd I do that?
Number 9 is cover art details. We talked about before, like file format, resolution, ownership rights of the cover art. And then additional credits, mixing and mastering engineers, please, and session musicians and featured artists, things of that nature. So those are your main metadata points, and it is really important to keep all these together and finish them before you release the track, because some of these do have to be done before the track is released. And like Sean said, some of these can be retroactively retroactively added later on, like mixing mastering engineer, for example, mostly done under liner notes, like for the most part. But you can add that later on. It doesn't have to be within your comment section of an MP3 or anything like that. So those are some of the big hitters.
Those are the big ones. Those are the ones that, as you mentioned, are most prominent, most forward-facing, can create a better experience for your end listener, depending on how they consume your music, and definitely something to go after and to get all that information as you are creating your song.
Exactly. So those are basically all the front-facing metadata topics that we kind of had to touch on. I mean, there are more specific ones like the mood one that's out with Spotify and stuff, like that categorizes it by mood and stuff. I think you can actually put that in yourself. You can kind of describe how it is, but I thought that was done by an algorithm too. I don't really know how that one functions. I don't even know if you can embed that like more specifically. So
I mean, I know when I've updated my own music through CD Baby, they'll ask questions like, what other artists are similar to this? And like, they ask, what is the mood?
Yeah.
So that's probably put in, once again, at the distribution side of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, this just goes to show that metadata will forever change with technologies that are released and how music is consumed too.
Yeah.
You know, things will be added, things might be more obscure at some point, but it's really important to always take note of, the really main ones. There are a few that will never go away, like song title, artist name. Those are not leaving anytime soon unless AI.
We're not going to that.
Even they'll be tagged. But yeah, there are very specific things that you need to do to make sure that your bases are covered and make sure you have all the correct information so that way you are properly credited and paid for your work and you can track your work and it looks professional. That's another thing is that front facing, it's very professional to make sure all your ducks are in a row. It makes you look like you have your shit together.
Yeah, well, it is getting your shit together.
It is 100%. It is.
Yeah, we can curse up a storm now because we have an explicit rating.
That's right. That's in our metadata now.
Yeah,
we told it that we swear. Fuck.
Well, I mean, this was a short one, but
it was a really short one.
It's an important one.
It is.
And definitely one that needs to be covered, and especially going back to the metadata, like the credits aspect of it, how you mentioned you can put in who are the session musicians, who are the engineers and all the producers, all that kind of stuff. So historically in the music industry, crediting these kinds of people, the mixing engineer, the mastering engineer, the session musicians, that's not been a common occurrence.
Yeah.
Unlike like photography where it's like, hey, I took the photo.
Right.
I have all this. You better credit me if you post this photo, even though you paid me to take the photo.
Exactly.
It's not really been a thing in the music industry.
Yep.
I know a lot of people have put out and pushed for it to be more of a thing. I'm definitely one of them as well.
Same.
If you record at a studio, please credit.
Yep.
If you are able to, the recording engineer, the mixing engineer, the mastering engineer, because not only is this metadata important for all this categorizing, it does also work kind of in tandem with like SEO and searching and whatnot. It's relevant information. And when people are looking for certain songs and whatnot, all this metadata is used to help point them to your song or introduce your song to new people and whatnot. So having proper credits are incredibly important. If you are given the opportunity to do so. Once again, I know some distributors, if you're relying on them to embed metadata, they don't even allow for you to put certain kinds of information in. They don't even ask for it. In which case, if you want to, there are definitely programs out there which will allow you to embed your own metadata and put your own information in. As you mentioned, iTunes is the cheapest one. Even if you just put it in the comments or whatnot, which you can do on most softwares, if you are rendering it out, you can put that stuff in a comments thing. And if you are completely unsure of it, if you're working with a mastering engineer, talk to them about what kind of metadata you have that you want embedded and what they're able to do. And, they'll let you know what they can add, what they can't add. Now, specifically, if you're going that route, for an ISRC code, has to be registered, has to be submitted and whatnot. And when you do it through a distributor, they do it on your behalf for the song. If you want to take the route and go out there and get your own ISRC code for your music before you get to the distributor, you definitely can, especially if you're self-distributing or you're going through a method that doesn't necessarily have that kind of service. Things to be aware of. Now, when you do post it through these services, they automatically will add ISRC and things like that. Now you're going to have to log back into your account and look it up to find that information, because some of it doesn't actually get applied or get created until after it's posted, and whatnot. So
yeah. I'm always a big proponent of crediting everybody that's on the song. And I feel like a lot of people these days are more apt to it. And we're just waiting for distributors to catch up to that. And why we haven't caught up to that is beyond me. It doesn't take much extra metadata to actually put in there.
No.
I'm sure the software coding is not that intense to do. It's just pure laziness. And that's just my take on it. And I mean, I think everybody that has a hand in the pot should be credited. And how you determine who gets paid from is a different story. That's not up to the distributors, but like everyone should at least be credited. So it would make it a nice, cleaner, easier world. So when ducks do finally get in a row, make sure that you're on top of it, and everything will be automatically, hopefully, pre-filled for you. And you'll be good to go on your past releases at least, and then you'll be good to go on your future releases when you have all your ducks in a row.
Well, I was going to say, if you want to be good to go on your future releases, you need to hit up this guy right here.
Thanks,
That's right.
man.
We're at the self-promo part of the podcast.
I will try to help you get your metadata the best that you've ever seen it right after we're done recording and mixing and mastering, because that's what I do, baby. You can find out more about what I do at studio222recording.com and hit me up there. You can fill out a little quote request form and tell me all about your project. I love working with audio, so I'd love to hear what you're working on and see if we're good fits for each other and see where we kind of take it from there.
Yeah,
I know Sean will also help you with some metadata after a project.
That's true. I have a website called swsrecordings.com. That's my studio. I do remote mixing and mastering for folk, rock, acoustic, and blues. So if those are your genres, hit me up. We'll see if we're a good fit. Work together. I also do artist development coaching, which is basically this podcast, but more specified towards you and your music career. So contact me once again through my website, and we can have that conversation. I'd love to talk with you. Aside from that, if you want to, keep consuming this kind of information for free and through this podcast, the podcast is posted on any podcast platform out there. In terms of social platforms, we have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And YouTube is the main platform. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you're subscribed. And also, we post specific and unique content on YouTube, like shorts and informational videos and things that are relevant to changes in the industry as they happen. So definitely keep up with Music Maker's Cookbook on these platforms if you want to be more engaged, more involved, and make a living in this industry, grow your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you very much. So with all that being said, thank you for listening to this episode with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Once again, let us know your preferred way of listening to music. And with that all being said, from our kitchen to yours.
Bon appetit.